Hello and happy Friday. Merry Friday, I should say, as you are tuning in for a rather festive edition of this week's Fridays Live. Hello to everybody who's watching. I can see we've already got about 20. Oh, yeah, numbers going up steadily. About 34 people watching. Hopefully, more will join soon. Lovely to virtually see you all again. It feels like I haven't been on here for quite a while. And this won't be the final live broadcast we do before we break up for Christmas. It'll be the last Friday's live we do before Christmas because, of course, next Friday is Christmas Eve. But Mary McKee, the wonderful Mary McKee, will be doing a bit of a year in review session next Wednesday. That'll be quite an interesting one to tune into. She will be having a look back at everything we've done at Find My Past over the past year. And I think you can probably all appreciate it's been a very busy year. I'm actually just looking at myself on the screen now, and I can see the bags under my eyes. But there's a good reason for those. We're frantically preparing for the launch of the 1921 census on January the 6th, which is when we will be back with our next live broadcast, January the 6th. Keep that date in mind. But yes, we're all working at kind of fever pitch at the moment. Everything's moving very quickly. We're very excited. We cannot wait. Yeah, not long. It feels like I should have two advent calendars, one that counts down to Christmas Day and one that counts down to the launch of the 1921 census, because every single day I wake up, I'm like, oh, X days till we go. But yeah, very exciting times. Hello to everybody who's tuning in. I can see loads of people saying hello already. A few people already saying hello to the wonderful Jessie, who is manning the controls today. She's looking after the comments. And on the subject of comments, if you're tuning in for the very first time, I know most of you aren't. I can already see a load of familiar faces, me Friday pals. We do these every single Friday. It's just a bit of fun, really. Family history fun. Chance for us to tell you what's been going on at Find My Past. When I do these, I basically just like to share very random and strange facts, things that I find interesting, things that I've been coming across, and today is no different. As well as having a look at this week's new record releases, because it wouldn't be a Friday if there weren't more new records on Find My Past. It is Find My Past Friday after all. We will also be having a look at some all manner of remarkable, interesting, sometimes strange slices of history from Christmases past, given that this is a bit of a festive theme Friday for us today. So yeah, don't be shy, say hello, let us know where you're watching from, and if you have any questions about anything, it doesn't have to be what we're talking about today, because I think my broadcast is going to be typically nonsensical. Hopefully some of it will be useful, but it's mainly just factlets and things that I've been finding interesting. But if you've got any comments about anything, whether it's Find My Past, whether it's about family history in general, whether it's about using the site, whether it's about knocking down a brick wall, pop them in the comments. If I see them, I will try my best to answer them live. Jessie will also be able to provide you with any links or resources that you're struggling to track down. But if you are a beginner, if you are a fledgling family historian, you are joining a very knowledgeable and incredibly helpful group of family historians. One of the things I love so much about doing these broadcasts is seeing everybody help each other out. Every single week it's the same. So if you have a query, if you're struggling to find someone, do pop it in the comments, and I'm sure that one of our wonderful, wonderful community members will do their very best to help you solve that mystery. So hello to all of you. I can say hello to Shirley, hello to Beth, Andrea in Stoke-on-Trent, Karen, Joe, Rosie, actually on time today. Very glad to see it. Claire in Adelaide, Australia. I imagine, Claire, you are enjoying somewhat different weather to me right now. I'm actually in a slightly different location. I'm staying at my father-in-law's in Whitstable in Kent on the coast for a bit of a pre-Christmas getaway with wife and the baby, who are actually out on a walk. I bet they're freezing. But yeah, let us know where you're watching from and let us know how you're doing. Sue's continuing the trend. Dark day in Guildford, Surrey. Well, the nights are drawing near. It's getting cozy. It's time for a hot cup of cocoa. Nice Christmas jumper, which is a shame. Unfortunately, I'm not wearing because I didn't pack any. But yeah, as it's getting colder, and it's just a great opportunity to stay and get cozy and, I don't know, do some family history research, perhaps. Robin, who's enjoying a chilly but bright day in Toronto. What a wonderfully international audience we have today. I'm loving that. Heather, chilly day in Edinburgh. Miko is tuning in as well. I'm sure we can expect some fun comments from Miko. He normally does his best to make me read out stupid things on air, and every time I fall for it, hook, line, and sinker. Great. Well, it's lovely to see you all saying hello. I could spend probably the next half an hour reading through all your wonderful comments. But on the subject of comments, what is this week's question of the week? We ask these every single week. It's just a bit of fun. It's a way to get the comments rolling. And who knows, maybe we will inspire each other in the process. I think this actually might be the same one that I asked last Christmas, but I've been so wrapped up in all things 1921. My brain probably isn't functioning at peak capacity at the moment, so apologies if it is, but it's still an interesting one. I love hearing this. Question of the week is, what festive traditions have been passed down by your family? Christmas, of course, is a time for families. It's when we gather with our nearest and dearest. Some of us will be sharing time-honoured traditions that may have been passed down for many, many, many generations. I'd love to hear yours. Maybe it's something that I could even adopt myself. I'm going back up to Liverpool to see my family, which I wasn't able to do last Christmas, so I'm very, very excited. My mum and dad are desperate to see their grandson. Really looking forward to it. So yeah, give me some ideas. Do you guys have any fun family festive traditions that have been passed down through the ages that we could give a go? I can tell you mine. I think the one I told you about last year, I'll keep that up on screen actually, just to remind you. And just, when you're answering your question of the week in the comments, just start it with a QOTW. That helps me spot them and read them out on air. But yeah, mine are the one that it's only been going for, well, it's going to be going for 3 generations when my son is old enough to appreciate what writing a letter to Father Christmas actually is. But it started with my grandfather, my dad's dad, which was our unusual, somewhat novel. I actually don't know of anybody else who does it this way, method of sending our letters to Father Christmas. Lots of people do it by post. Lots of people pop them in the fireplace and let them flutter up the chimney. My granddad started it with my dad, which was whenever they'd have bonfire night. My dad is obsessed with fireworks. I quite like fireworks. My granddad apparently was a big firework enthusiast as well. So I'm just getting a message from a colleague, which I will ignore because I'm now speaking to you. But yeah, what my granddad used to do with my dad was he'd hold back a rocket or two from bonfire night. And then when it came to Christmas, I think they normally did it Christmas Eve. We did it a little bit earlier, but that was we delivering letters to Father Christmas by rocket. Yes, rather than popping them in the fireplace or through the letterbox, we'd write our letters, attach them to the rocket, or go down the garden, wrapped up in our coats and scarves. Dad would light the fuse, and off it would go into the sky. And he even had his own novel explanation of how they got there. Because being curious kids, we'd be like, Daddy, how could Father Christmas read these letters if we're literally blowing them up? What Dad would say was that they'd be blown to smithereens. These smithereens would be caught by the north wind, blown all the way to the North Pole, where elves would fish them out the sky with nets. They'd stitch them back together, and that is how Father Christmas would know what to send us. I just think that's really. I always loved it. It really caught my imagination as a child, and it was really exciting going down the garden and watching the rocket go up and it exploding, and imagining all those little bits of glittering light coming down with bits of letters that would soon be scooped out of the sky by the elves. But yeah, loved it, and it's a tradition I will certainly be carrying on with my own son. He's only 1 at the moment, so he's a few years off writing letters to Father Christmas. So no rockets this year, but who knows, maybe the year after next. Another one, and I am going to look at yours in a second, I can't wait to hear them. Another one, which is from my mother's side, is robins. And again, this doesn't go back particularly far. It started with my nana, my mother's mum. But my nana was someone who actually experienced quite a lot of loss in her life quite early on. Her mother died when she was about 13. Her father died when she was 20. And there's that saying, isn't there, when robins, what is it? Robins near loved ones. Ooh. There's a phrase, but lots of people believe that seeing a robin is a sign of a departed loved one coming to pay you a visit. And my mum, who sadly has also experienced quite a bit of a loss in her life, also loves that and is a bit of a believer in it herself. So robin, my mum goes robin crazy at Christmas. Most of the Christmas decorations are robin themed. The Christmas cards she sends out every year usually depict robins. And I've started to pick up that tradition myself. My Christmas tree at home is decorated with quite a lot of robin themed decorations. We have a few robin things up, and it's just a nice reminder of all those loved ones and family members who sadly aren't with us anymore, and we can look at these robins and think of them fondly at Christmas. So before we dive into this week's new records, I'm going to take another quick look at your comments, and maybe some of you have shared some some of your Christmas traditions. Roxanne Conger, we love your strange facts, Alex. Well, I'm glad because I've got some pretty weird ones for you this week. Um, Thomas Frederick asking to make a connection with Victoria on Facebook. Love seeing that. This is what this is all about. Um, wow, Sharon, it is just past 6 minutes. It's just gone 6 minutes past 3 in Victoria, Australia, and Sharon is tuning in. Love that. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to hear you. Very glad to have you here. That's dedication. Um, let's have a look. Thomas Frederick. I'm keeping an eye on that. Anya's visiting. Sorry, I'm away. Oh, no worries. Nice to see you dropping in. Visiting family near Edinburgh. I hope you have a lovely Christmas and New Year. And I'll see you all in 2022. God, sounds weird saying that. 2022, doesn't it? Yes, I echo on his comments. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. Let's see. Question of the week. Beth Whitley, classic one, isn't it? Playing Monopoly for several years. Monopoly. I think our Monopoly set literally comes out once a year, and that is normally on Boxing Day. Joan is watching in Seattle. Merry Christmas to all. Very soon we'll be tuning in from Mexico. Oh, very nice. Rather jealous there. Denise, nothing particularly bonkers really, although stockings, of course, stockings have to have a tangerine in. Walnuts as well, that's what we always get in them as well, and it has to be in the toe of the stocking. Yeah, right at the bottom, adds a bit of weight. It's always fun fishing that out as well. Alan didn't know until Christmas, the Christmas presentation, that the oranges in our stockings were passed down over a few generations. I did it for my girls as well, but I hope they continue it for their future kids. Tradition is important, and I think tradition is a big part of Christmas. Sue, who said, my mother had 2 elf decorations that she hung up long before Elf on the Shelf. Bit of a pioneer on the Elf on the Shelf front. We have nothing older, as all grandparents had passed on before I was born. This is a common one, isn't it? But it's so Christmassy. June, a stocking stuffed with fresh fruits, nuts, candies, a tiny gift to open while the parents slept in a bit. That's a good tactic. I might be employing that in the future. I will also pass down the waffle pancake for Christmas. Oh, that's a good idea. Waffles and pancakes for a Christmas midday meal while Mum was making the larger meal. We normally have a bacon sandwich, but bacon and sausage sandwich, but it means I'm normally quite full by the time Christmas dinner comes around. One more before I start looking at records, and we will come back to these, so do keep your answers coming in. Roxanne, question of the week. I don't know about any long-standing traditions aside from Christmas Eve PJs. We started one with our kids, though. We get them a new Christmas winter holiday book every year for Christmas Eve bedtime story. Love that. Definitely going to be doing that one going forward. These are great. I'm going to do one more. Victoria Whitwell. Hello, Victoria. Lovely to see you as always. A fireside mince pie out for Father Christmas with an alcoholic drink to wash down and a carrot for Rudolph. Yes, we did that. My dad used to take it to extreme lengths as well. I grew up in a Victorian house, so every room had chimneys and fireplaces. My bedroom did as well. And what my dad used to do is we'd put them out on the toy box just by the window. And Dad would get his Wellingtons, and I don't know if it was coal dust, because that's probably not the best thing to put on carpets. So he put some kind of soot on the bottom of the wellies, and he'd leave footprints going from the fireplace all the way around, down to the Christmas tree, back up the stairs. And that used to make me so excited as a kid. Like, look, you can see his footprints, and just made it seem a lot more real. So before we dive into this week's new records, what am I like? We're only 15 minutes in, and we haven't even got to what I'm actually meant to be talking about. I thought I'd do, because not everybody has a long-standing time-honored tradition that's been passed down for many generations. I thought I'd ask a bonus question of the week. It doesn't have to be an ancestor, because I'm always asking questions like, which ancestor would you have around for dinner? Which ancestor would you do this for? But I still love hearing about it, because it means you tell me your wonderful family stories. But yeah, bonus question of the week: which historical figure or ancestor, if you had some kind of time traveling teleportation device, which historical figure or ancestor would you invite for your Christmas dinner? I know exactly who I'd have, because I'm a big fan of eccentrics, particularly some of the great British eccentrics who've lived over the years. This is a guy that Miko got me onto, and is one of my favorite eccentrics I've ever come across. Probably it wouldn't make for a peaceful Christmas dinner. It would be for a raucous one, which is why I'd want him there. I reckon he'd be great fun. Mad Jack, or John Mad Jack Mitten. Um, he was a member of the landed gentry, I believe, from Shropshire. Yes, he was. He was a Shropshire landowner. He was born in 1796 and died in 1834. And carrying on the long tradition of Great British eccentrics, John Mitten was absolutely bonkers, as his nickname Mad Jack does kind of imply. He started life out early. I won't go too much into detail because it's not that Christmassy, but look up John Mitten. The guy is hilarious. And I think if you had him round for Christmas dinner, it would be an absolute hoot. Hopefully no one will get hurt, because sometimes I think the description of mad, bad, and dangerous definitely did apply to Mad Jack Mitten. So he started life as he meant to go on. He was expelled from Westminster School when he was very little for assaulting a master. Don't want that behaviour at Christmas dinner. But he was a genuinely notorious rake, probably one of the most notorious rakes of the Regency era. He had so many crazy exploits. He once set fire to his own shirt to cure a really severe case of hiccups. It sounds crazy, but apparently it worked. He once rode his horse up a hotel's grand staircase and onto the balcony before jumping down over the diners in the restaurant below, which led to him being banned for life. He once came to dinner riding a bear, which I wouldn't want him to do at my Christmas party, but he, never a dull moment with Mad Jack. He once disguised a monkey as the devil, hid it in a cake and had it burst out and scare his guests. He did all sorts. So yeah, John Mitten is the lunatic, the bonkers eccentric that I would love to invite for Christmas dinner. If I wanted something a bit more calm, I'd probably go for Dickens, because the man kind of did invent a lot of the things we think of when we think of a traditional British Christmas. So yes, remember, keep those questions coming in. First question of the week was, what festive traditions have been passed down by your family? Second is, what historical figures or ancestors would you invite to Christmas dinner if you could? Right. Without further ado, it is time, definitely time, given that we're already 20 past 4, to take a look at this week's new records. We release new records every Friday, and this Friday is no different. So what have we got for you this week? Nice mixed bag. One thing to remind you all of, actually, is this is the last. We won't be doing a Find My Past Fridays update next week, because, of course, it is Christmas Eve. So I don't know if this is the last one of the new year, but it's definitely our last Find My Past Fridays update this side of Christmas. So first up, well, really mixed bag. We've got records all the way from Coventry to California. And if you do want to know more about what's been added, you can read Jessie's marvelous Find My Past Friday blog. I'm sure she will pop a link in the comments for you to peruse at your pleasure. But first up, we've got a collection of California Immigration Office Special Inquiry records. That sounds quite, at first glance, you're like, what are Immigration Office Special Inquiry records? Well, I can tell you, and I'm basically paraphrasing directly from Jessie's blog here. So thank you, Jessie. So yeah, at the turn of the 1900s, all those who were migrating into the United States, this was a huge period of migration into North America, faced what was called a primary inspection. And that basically was a bit of an interrogation. It was where their personal details were taken down, such as their name, their age, their reasons for migrating to the United States, and provided the information they gave was satisfactory to the officials who were taking it down, they would be permitted to enter. If anything did come up that raised some flags or were causes for concern to the immigration officials, their case would then be handed over to a special inquiry board, and that's what these records pertain to. There could be numerous reasons that your case could be passed over to the Special Inquiry Board. Could be concerns, very pertinent for today, that you were carrying some kind of infectious disease, not COVID, obviously, but perhaps hookworm or TB. There could be suspicion that you actually your passage wasn't a legal one, and that you'd invented the country as a stowaway. Or there could even be concerns that you were looking to conduct an overseas marriage by proxy, which was basically marrying a woman from abroad, primarily Japan, I believe, at this area. And the bride would then move to the US to get with a marriage visa. which was legal in Japan but not in the United States. And this is a practice we commonly now know as ordering a mail order bride. It was going on back in the early 1900s as well. So yeah, very, very, very interesting records. We have images as well as transcripts. You will find I think the majority, if not all of these records, are from San Francisco, which was of course a very significant port of immigration in California back then. But you will find, at the very minimum, you'll find names, surname, given name, the vessel on which they sailed, their date of arrival, the cause of their detention, which is probably the most interesting snippet of information here, along with all these other useful biographical details you can get to help you take your research further. The name of the inspector who was conducting the primary inspection, the action taken by the Board of Special Inquiry, so you'll be able to find out whether they were permitted entry, whether they were detained, or whether they were sent back to their home country, and when applicable, the date of their deportation, and I think the name of the ship they were deported on as well. So very, very detailed records. And if you had ancestors that emigrated to California during this period, it's almost, well, it is definitely worth taking a look. That is not all we have this week. So as well as these California immigration records, we have a nice new update to our collection of Warwickshire baptisms. Remember, our parish record collections are always being bolstered. Anytime we can expand them, we certainly will do it. This week's no different. If you've got ancestors from Warwickshire, good opportunity to have another check in there and see if a record that could be the missing piece of your puzzle has now been added. I don't need to explain to you what baptisms do I? Probably not. Well, if you are a complete newbie, I will do it anyway. Baptisms are so important for expanding your family tree, as well as providing you with important biographical details about the ancestor you're looking for, such as their date and place of birth. Well, not exact date of birth, but rough date of birth. Usually it's the date of baptism, which was normally quite close to their date of birth. But the really useful thing about these records is they will normally provide you with the names of both parents, if not at least one of them. Very, very important for adding a new branch to your family tree. And what you can also do is you can usually search our baptism records by putting in the names of two parents, and that will allow you to get a better idea of the number of children born to that marriage. So that's a great way of uncovering a sibling of one of your ancestors you may not previously have been aware of. Always worth doing. But yeah, check out the new Warwickshire baptisms. And then I'm going to save the last collection till after I tell you about the newspapers, because that segues into my next section. We're going to start getting festive in a few minutes. Don't worry, we're getting to the Christmassy bit. So yeah, as always, we've added an incredible amount of new newspapers. We had so many newspapers, it's quite hard for me to keep track. Every week there's loads. We have added this week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 new titles. I believe they're all Irish titles. No, they are indeed all Irish titles. We've got new titles from Cork, Tipperary, Dublin, Ulster, Kerry, Lurgan, and a few national titles as well, like the Irish Weekly, Western People. If you want to get a better sense of exactly what years they cover, check out Jessie's blog. She's probably posted a link in the comments already. That will also provide you with very handy links to take you straight to the newspaper you may or may not want to search. So yeah, and as well as the 8 new Irish titles, we've added updates to a wide selection of others. Looking at it here, there's about 15 from Kent, Essex, Lancashire, London, Peterborough, Gloucestershire, Sutton Coldfield, Newark, all over the shop. But yeah, if you want to find out more, check out the blog. And then last but by no means least, we have a interesting new collection of Workhouse records. This is the Warwickshire Coventry Workhouse Deaths 1845 to 1943. Sorry, I'm developing a bit of a cough. I don't have COVID. I took a test this morning. I'm fine there. But yeah, Workhouse records are a resource that I often think are quite overlooked. I think most people would be quite shocked to realise the sheer numbers of people that pass through the Workhouse system in the UK and Ireland. Many of us will have at least an ancestor that entered into a workhouse at some point. Even if people from it wasn't just people from the lowest rungs of society. People who were previously doing quite well may have fallen on hard times. Anybody could end up in the workhouse if through a twist of fate. Um, but you can find out all sorts. And we've got some brilliant collections on the site, from Board of Guardians minute books to lists to admission registers. Just if you go to our all, I still call it our A to Z of record search. I don't think it's called that anymore. I think it's just called All Records. Type in Workhouse and you'll get the full list of collections we have. We've got them from all different counties, all parts of the country. We've got a great collection of Workhouse records. And in terms of Workhouse records being excellent, these are no different. Um, so they cover the Coventry Union Workhouse over a course of about 98, well, about exactly 98 years. And they are essentially lists of deaths. Quite a sad collection, but all stories matter and it's important to tell the bad and the good. Um, but workhouses were not pleasant places. They were meant to be harsh. They were meant to act as a deterrent. Going into the workhouse was meant to be viewed as a last resort, and the people who ran them were quite callous in their approach to this. And as a result, conditions could often be quite dangerous. Beds were packed in tightly together, so as you can imagine, disease was rife and spread like wildfire. People were forced to work 12-hour work days on very meager diets. This left people incredibly run down and susceptible to illness. And when you combine that with the fact that they were packed in very tightly together, that did not help. Families were split apart, husbands from wives, children from parents. Um, Infants were allowed to stay with their mothers up till 9 years old, but children as young as 10, 11, 12, 13 taken away from their parents and put to work. It doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Um, so as you can imagine, death in the workhouse was not an unusual occurrence, and that's what these records cover. Common causes would include things like meningitis, whooping cough, tuberculosis, pneumonia. Um, in fact, one of the things Jessie highlighted in her blog was that in 1856, the Coventry Standard, which is a newspaper we have in our archive, released a very shocking report noting that 156 children had died over the last quarter alone, 109 of whom were 5, which just goes to show how dangerous a place the workhouse could be. I mean, the newspaper report, being rather callous, didn't blame it on the Board of Guardians or the people that were running these institutions. They concluded that the issue must lie, in fact, with mothers. Um, Not that the mothers were at fault, but the fact that they were occupied for many hours of the day with their positions at the workhouse. So they weren't really able to devote their full attention to their children and notice the initial symptoms that, if were caught earlier enough, were able to prevent deaths. But as I said, that's a bit morbid, a bit sad, but interesting collection nonetheless. But it does segue into my next Christmassy section, which I will look at in a little bit, which was Christmas in the workhouse. What was it like? Not as bad as you might think, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's have a look at what people are saying in the comments. Angel Dunn has said, for question of the week, I think this is in terms of Christmas traditions that were passed down. I followed a tradition from my parents for my children. On Christmas Eve, we had to cut the shape of. This isn't one I haven't heard of before. On Christmas Eve, we had to cut the shape of arrows out of paper or newspaper. On Christmas morning, Father Christmas would have hidden our presents. I love this, around the house, and we had to search for them via the arrows. I continued this for my children, who are now all in their 40s, only one grandchild, and they haven't carried it on, sadly. I love that. I think I'm going to be doing that one, Age. I'm going to make a note of that. I think my son would love that. I mean, he loves trying to find things anyway, not necessarily things I hide, just things he's not meant to find. But I think that's a really nice one. Thank you for sharing. Let's have another look. Yeah, this is definitely this is mine as well. Tradition passed by my boyfriend is to watch The Muppets Christmas Carol every single Christmas Eve. Yeah, I watch it's normally on Channel 4 in the UK every Christmas Eve. Yeah, that is my tradition. Every single Christmas Eve, I watch The Muppets Christmas Carol. I can't think of a single year I haven't watched it. Maybe not in its entirety, but at least a portion of it. One from Linda saying, question of the week. One small present opened while eating a mince pie after midnight church service. Main present after Christmas dinner and the Queen's speech, of course. My lot don't want to know. Oh, I like those. Those are good ones. Um, oh, so this is interesting. Susan's saying, on my father's side, ancestry is Belgian. And every Christmas we would find an orange and candy plus nuts in our shoes. Ah, so is that a tradition of Belgian origin? Is that the candy and nuts, or the placing of them in shoes specifically? Um, one more. Oh, I think this is June saying, yeah, in relation to robins, it is a cardinal visit that a loved one is looking over you. Yeah, I really love that idea. And yeah, a few people are saying that. Oh, that's really lovely, as I love robins myself. Victoria loves it too. My mum actually bought me for Christmas, not for Christmas. I think she got it me. Yeah, she did last Christmas. A set of robin Christmas tree decorations. They were really cute. They came in an egg box. There was a dozen of them, and they're little like woolen egg-shaped robins, and they're all over my tree, and they look absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I'm glad that maybe some people have taken inspiration from that. Robin themed Christmas decorations look lovely, and they do remind you of those who sadly are no longer with us. Right, time is marching on. You're sending some wonderful comments. Um, Miko, one from Miko. There's a really good fit. Is this a silly one? I'm going to try and look at this one with a skeptical eye. There's a really good. Oh, yeah. Glad I didn't take this at face value, but I love these, Miko. Never stop. There's a really good physics book we get around and read at Christmas. It's about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down. Actually, on the subject of physics, let's do one weird Christmas fact before we dig into Christmas at the Workhouse. Did you know? Let me see if I can find it. I put this down as a note. You might know this already, but scientists have estimated that Father Christmas would have to travel at an average speed at just over 5 million miles per hour, based on his 24-hour window to hit each household on Christmas Eve. This is based on the theory that say there's 2.67 children per household, with 75 million households worldwide. So he'd have to travel at 5.03 million miles per hour. The speed of light is 671 million miles per hour. So if we ever get there, presents for everybody. Every yeah, faster than light travel, everybody could get presents almost instantaneously. So yeah, that's my first weird Christmas fact of the day, inspired by Miko's comment. Sorry, I really do want to start talking about Christmas at the Workhouse, but there's been some really fantastic comments coming through. I'm going to put them, otherwise I will never get to the research I did and want to share with you. So, Christmas in the Workhouse, what was it like? Well, it was a surprisingly lavish affair. Um, and the reason I actually wanted to talk about this was because we had Workhouse records, but also as it serves as a great reminder of how amazing newspapers are for opening a window onto the past. I know I rabbit on about this. I talk about newspapers all the time, but I really don't think there is a resource quite like them in terms of putting your open it, getting a real clear, painting a picture, getting a really clear sense of what things were like and what our ancestors experienced. And there's so many reports about workhouse conditions in the newspapers. Many journalists and many newspapers were horrified by some of the awful conditions that I just kind of listed off before. And there were often big exposés printed. I think we covered one from the Sheffield Week Workhouse a couple of months back, where there was like a full page in one of our newspapers detailing a reporter's trip to the workhouse. But there's also lots in the newspapers about Christmas in the workhouse as well. Basically, what would happen is the Guardians would call for donations of gifts and food and put on festive feasts for the inmates. And this was a once in a year thing for the inmates. This was the kind of food and festive feasts they'd probably never see, given that many of them were from very humble and poor backgrounds. As I said, this is very well documented, and I think some of the journalists at the time agreed that this was largely a bit of a PR exercise for the workhouses. I say this as a guy, as from my past PR manager. I know a little bit about PR, and I think that's what they were doing here. It was intended to show the public a lighter side to these institutions that had a very dark and scary reputation. We find all these newspaper reports about the kind of decorations that we put up. They decorate rooms with paper chains, cards, gramophones. When they were invented, would play festive tunes throughout the workhouse. Slightly earlier, any inmates that could play an instrument would be given one to put on a little bit of entertainment. During the winter months, workhouses would normally granted a little bit of extra money for coal, as well as an additional stipends for things like the decorations I just mentioned, toys for the younger inmates, and other festive extras. Um, I mean, even the royal family got involved. In 1905, there's reports about how the king himself had donated 3 whole guineas towards a Christmas tree for for the workhouse in King's Lynn. Um, but yeah, there's lots in the newspapers about this. You'll also see public appeals. There are a lot of public appeals about workhouses at Christmas, and as a result, they'd often receive quite generous donations, and sometimes they could go on quite surprising things. They'd be used to purchase china for Christmas dinner, which that money could have probably been slightly better spent. But of course, this was a PR exercise. The workhouses and the Guardians wanted to put their best foot forward and show the public, look, we're not uncaring monsters. We do this for our inmates, the wards under our care at Christmas. Um, the public as well would also send in presents and letters for the inmates. People would write in, there's reports of inmates receiving presents like musical instruments, dolls for the children, tobacco, pipes and snuff were particularly popular with the men, tea and sugar and sweets for the women. Sometimes these decorations were even dressed up by someone dressed as Father Christmas himself. I mean, I'm being a bit cynical, calling this a bit of a PR exercise, but I like to think this offered, this provided a kind of rare moment of joy in the otherwise somewhat bleak lives of these poor people who are forced into these terrible, terrible positions and places. Um, According to the reports, these feasts and presents were normally greatly appreciated. You know, they enjoyed it. They'd get to eat food they'd normally never otherwise get to eat: fruit, nuts, seed cake, mince pies, lemonade. They'd sometimes even get the chance to choose their own menu. They'd be given options like rabbit or pork as a change from their usual kind of very old beef cuttings and the kind of things they were normally sold. Um, like for example, Helston Workhouse. There's a report about how the inmates there had their own taste catered for. They got to request the main course, and their requests ranged from the usual well done beef to rare, crisp or fatty cuts. Meats were served apparently with plum or apple sauce and accompanied by parsnips and potatoes. Actually, my mouth's watering reading that. That does sound very nice. Um, and this would be followed by Christmas pudding, plum pudding, Christmas cake. Sometimes the inmates had helped to prepare the Christmas pudding themselves because huge quantities would be needed to feed everyone. Some workhouses had huge inmate populations. Um, one dessert that didn't make as frequent appearance, but does appear in the newspapers, is brandy pudding. Alcohol. This leads me on to the next one. Alcohol was a sorely disputed subject for workhouse guardians. One actually famously dubbed brandy the devil in solution. Um, the Victorians had these strange attitudes around the deserving and undeserving poor, and they feared that alcohol could lead to disorderly behaviour, especially as many of the inmates had been forced in to the workhouse due to problems that had resulted from alcoholism. That wasn't unusual. But some guardians did argue that it was unfair to deprive the inmates of at least one Christmas drink, and a glass of ale was normally allowed, as long as it was provided by a private donor, but mind you, and not from the workhouse funds. Um, but not all inmates um, accepted this with as gleefully and at face value as the rest did. Some actually saw this for what it was and would argue that a single day of generosity would not make up for the other 364 days when they were treated appallingly. For example, there was a journalist called George Robert Sims, who was a journalist who actually concentrated very much on the plight of the poor during the 19th century. Remember that name, actually, if you're interested in what it was like to be a very poor person in the late 19th century. Look up George Robert Sims in our newspaper archive because there's some fascinating reports. He was a fantastic journalist, and he really did go to great lengths to present the public with the realities of what life was like for these terribly poor people. He actually wrote a poem to this effect, telling the story of a man whose wife was left to starve upon entering the workhouse, but then was given a lavish Christmas feast. And I will read that poem for you now. He the whole point of it is that he saw these celebrations as showy affectation, an exercise in public relations, and it was quickly forgotten once the holiday season was over. So I'll read you an extract of his poem. He said, "There, get ye gone to your dinners. Don't mind me in the least. Think of the happy paupers eating your Christmas feast. And when you recount their blessings in your smug parochial way, say what you did for me too, only last Christmas Day." Had a way with words, George Robert Sims. Remember that name, George Robert Sims, a fantastic journalist. Um, so yeah, I mean, there were others. There was a radical politician, John Burns, who visited a workhouse in Wandsworth Workhouse in 1905. He gave a speech encouraging the inmates to view the workhouse as a temporary resort for which they could purge themselves of vices and forge a future career. But he reminded them that while their situation was unfortunate, they're able to change the future of both themselves and others. So radical politician, but not hugely sympathising. Yeah, so that was Christmas in the Workhouse. I spent a little bit more time on that than I actually planned to. So we'll have a look at your comments, and then we will take a look at some Christmas weird facts. So let's have a look. See, whoa, we've had loads while I've been rabbiting on about Christmas in the Workhouse. Denise McKnight, nice to get one for the bonus question, which was, what historical figure or ancestor would you invite to Christmas dinner if you could? Said, I'd have my great-grandmother. She came to our house every year at Christmas, so would it be lovely to chat to her, but have to be very careful with the cake. She actually broke the carving knife cutting Mum's Christmas cake. Still remember it. Well, yeah. Was the cake tasty? It sounds pretty hard. Another one from Beth, who said, would love to invite my great grandma and great great uncle. Main reason that I was like, yeah, I think quite a few people would echo this. I'd love some information from both of them as it's been lost to history. Roxanne saying, okay, you weren't kidding when you said that you had some real strange facts this week. I've got some stranger ones. Hang in there. Gail would invite King David. Very Christmassy. Philip Dennett, Father Christmas. Sue has said she'd invite Violet Carson for Christmas Day. I'd love to hear all about her time in the theatres and playing the piano to the silent movies many years before she joined Coronation Street as Ina Sharples. Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? A snapshot of a lost world, the whole vaudeville kind of thing. Actually, yeah, I'd love to invite I've told you about him so many times, but my 3 times great grandfather, who was William Arthur Crossland, went by the stage name Professor Chris Leno, man of many talents. He was a ventriloquist, a talented piano player. He ran Punch and Judy stalls. He did a living marionette show. I just reckon he'd be a hoot. He was an entertainer at the very core, multi-instrumentalist. My granddad remembered him and said he was the most incredible man. You could give him an instrument and he could just figure out, even if he'd never held one before, you give him an instrument and he would learn how to play it. He was mainly a pianist, but I'm sure that would make for some entertaining times. And actually, on the subject of inviting your ancestors to dinner, this can't all just be fun facts and a bit of silly nonsense, and I should try and leave you with something remotely useful before you go off for your Christmas breaks and to see your loved ones. Which was, don't forget, Christmas. COVID allowing, Christmas is a time that we gather our loved ones and our family members around us. So it's also an excellent opportunity to collect family stories that we actually do see every year. We see a bit of an uptick in interest in family history research in early January. And we don't know for certain, but our guess is that this is a result of families coming together over Christmas, recounting stories about, oh, do you remember Great Uncle John? Or do you remember Great Great Granddad doing this? And that leads to people getting curious and thinking, oh, do you know what? I'm going to give this a go. Either that or people are being given subscriptions or family tree stuff as Christmas presents. But yeah, having family all round is a great opportunity to grab those all important family stories. And as we always say, it's one of the best ways of getting started. So I've got a few tips. I mean, it's not rocket science, but worth bearing in mind. Start the conversation yourself. Don't be shy. Just start with if you don't want to, you don't necessarily have to start by demanding information. You can say, I remember when. Just start off talking about some memories, and the others will all pitch in. Without a doubt, your primary focus should be on the older members of your family if you're fortunate enough to still have them around and with you at Christmas. They'll have obviously more memories than anybody else, and they've interacted with multiple generations of your family. They'll often have the best perspective on historical change. I mean, I miss my granddad terribly. I mean, again, he's someone I'd definitely invite to dinner, but I loved hearing about his experiences, not only of the war, but working in engineering and how what British manufacturing was like in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and before it all kind of vanished. And he was a great example of someone who'd be able to give me a clear sense of just how much things had changed during the course of his life. So yeah, focus on your older family members. My other tip would be don't put it off. Now is the best time to preserve your family's memories. Memory is a fleeting thing, and when those memories are gone, normally you can't get them back. So if you've got the chance to do it, do it. If you can record them, even better. I promise you, you won't regret it. We about a year before my grandfather passed away, I was working at Found My Past, and this was a tip that was always given. And I thought, we've got to do it. So we sat my granddad down in front of a camera and recorded all of his memories. And I'm so, so glad we did. My son will never get the chance to meet him, but we've got all this wonderful video footage where we'll be able to say, that was your granddad, look, and listen to his memories. It was a special thing. So do it. Be upfront. Tell them you plan on picking their brains about the past because you want to build out the family tree. They might be slightly more happy to help once they understand while they're doing it. And if you can get other family members invested and excited in this, you're going to have a much easier time. So yeah, tell them why you're doing it. See if you can make your family history research a collaborative thing with your relatives. It really will help. Speaking to multiple family members at the same time will help. Again, this isn't all rocket science. I hope I'm not teaching my grandmother to suck eggs, but I wanted to give you at least some kind of advice. That is meant to be the purpose of these broadcasts. Remember, if your ancestors haven't mentioned people, places, or events that you haven't heard of before, inquire about them. This could serve as a great jumping off point for future research. But the golden rule, the thing you should never neglect to do, is make a note of absolutely everything. You could have a pen and paper by you and jot things down, but we are in the age of smartphones, the wonders of modern technology. Record it. Use voice notes on your phone. Record it. Make an audio note. Maybe tell them you're doing it first. But yeah, that'll be incredibly useful. And finally, don't ignore the more recent generations of your family. Just because they're younger, it doesn't mean they won't have valuable memories, or they may have had conversations with older family members that you're not aware of. A child's memory of their parents could unlock fascinating details that you otherwise might have been forgotten. And often, I think the perspective of a child, particularly at Christmas, is often different in eye-opening ways. And I often think, as a family historian, which we all are, it's very valuable to have multiple perspectives on the same events or time periods. So yeah, that's my advice. I hope some of you find it useful. Right, the 10 minutes we have left before I have to dash, and bid you all a very fond farewell and a Merry Christmas. Let's have a look at some more weird facts. I think, do you know what? Let's have a look at how dangerous Christmas could be. I feel like I'm veering slightly onto the morbid today's broadcast, but that's what I find interesting. I hope you do too. But Christmas could actually be quite a dangerous time, particularly for our Victorian ancestors. Health and safety wasn't a concept that was, it wasn't a concept during the Victorian era. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that people early decorations for Christmas trees included candles. I mean, who thought decorating incredibly flammable conifer trees with naked flames was a great idea? I mean, it looks pretty, but it's certainly not safe. But yeah, there were loads of different perils that could lead to disaster at Christmas time. One of the things was poison. Arsenic was actually very prevalent at Christmas time. The color green has long been associated with festivity. The shade of holly, ivy, fir trees. It reminds us that after the dark days of winter, spring will soon return. I think that's actually quite an ancient custom that goes back to pre-Christian times. Our pagan roots. The sense of renewal after the winter, Yule, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, green is associated with renewal, new life, festivity, but it's also associated with something else too. Poison, more specifically arsenic. I was actually listening to a podcast about this recently, talking about how green dye was a terrible killer during the uh, Victorian era because there was an incredibly popular dye. I think it was known as Shields green or emerald green. It was used for everything. It was used for dyeing wallpaper. It was used for dyeing dresses. Women would wear these dazzlingly green dresses that apparently were very complementary to complexions and would really make you stand out in. That actually came out of gaslighting when they moved from candlelight to gaslighting. That's when the popularity of these highly toxic green dyes just skyrocketed because you could be seen better. And if you were wearing one of these green dresses in a newly lit in a newly improved gaslit room, you'd really turn some heads. But it killed. Alarmingly, some people use this Shields green as a food colouring at Christmas, though. You've got loads of cases of this in the newspapers. In 1848 in Northampton, a man died and several were left seriously ill after a blancmange that was served at a Christmas meal was dyed with Shields green. Yeah, this Christmas party was literally served a blancmange dyed with arsenic. The confectioner who sold it was actually imprisoned for manslaughter because they hadn't been clear about the quantity of dye that would make it toxic. You've got loads of examples like this. On December 1871, a professor of chemistry in Glasgow was swinging his way along a street in the city, and the shop windows were bulging with displays, and he paused outside a bakery, and one cake in particular caught his eye. It was vivid green. And being the brilliant chemist this man was, this sent off all alarm bells. He described it as suspicious. He thought, Christmas cakes should not be that green. He bought the cake, didn't not to eat, but took it back to his laboratory, tested it, and found incredibly dangerously high levels of arsenic. The next day, he sent two of his assistants to that very same bakery. They each brought a green cake, both of which also turned out to contain high levels of arsenic. Thankfully, this professor then went to the police. They searched the shop and found loads more green cakes. I'm laughing, but it's awful. Found loads more green cakes on the premise. And the bakery's owner admitted that he'd intentionally painted the cakes with emerald green, but he'd added that the dye was perfectly legal. It was. That's the thing. The dye was perfectly legal at the time. He hadn't broken the law by buying it. And but he was prosecuted. He was prosecuted because even though the buying the dye wasn't illegal, maybe he shouldn't have been selling cakes dyed in it. But yeah, there are loads of reports. I could actually talk a lot about arsenic and what its many uses. Maybe we'll hold that back for another week, actually, given that we only have about 5 minutes left, and you've all been sending in such lovely comments. But I'll do a few more. I did promise you some facts. Got to give you some facts. I'm like I always run out of time. I had many more to give you. How about let me find a good one. I've lost my facts. Oh, I know. How about some weird and wonderful things that happened in previous Decembers? You know me, I'm a big fan of historical anniversaries. But did you know that in December 1926, the whole country was wondering where on earth was Agatha Christie? Agatha Christie actually did a bit of a Gone Girl. I had no idea about this, and I love Agatha Christie. I've read loads of her books. But yeah, on the 3rd of December 1926, Agatha Christie vanished herself. No one, the exact reasons for this are a bit of a mystery, but some people have suspected she might have been trying to get her adulterous husband, Archie, arrested for her murder. Maybe not permanently, but maybe just to frighten him, because Archie had not been a particularly good husband. She abandoned her car in the countryside. She hid in a hotel under a false name for 11 days. And during that time, the entire country was being scoured for Agatha Christie, because she was quite famous by then, I believe. But exactly what happened during those 11 days, the reasons behind it, there's still a little bit of mystery behind it. Let's find another one. can hear my son downstairs having a laugh. Um, I'm gonna find one more. Sorry, I'd logged all my Christmas facts somewhere, and now I can't find any of them. Um, this is another good Santa related one. Did you know that a team of scientists did some food maths and found that if Santa visited 640 million homes every Christmas Eve, he would have to consume around no, he would end up consuming around 150 billion calories based on all the festive treats that were left out for him. If you lived 80 apparently if you lived 80 years on a 2,000 calorie per day diet, you would have to live approximately 205,480 years to match the 150 billion calories that Father Christmas apparently consumes in one night. Um, Also, on the subject of Santa, the financial experts at Forbes actually calculated Santa's net worth and concluded that he would be worth around infinity to pull off everything he does, which would make him the richest person in the world, fictional or otherwise. I did have a lot more strange Christmas facts for you, but I think I might have to leave them in the interest of time. Before I go, I want to have a look at a couple more comments that people have been sending through. Thank you so much for these, and apologies I haven't had time to get through them all. Ingrid Shippington has said, bonus question of the week. I'd invite my paternal grandfather. I never knew him because he died when I was only a few months old. Recently inherited. Oh wow! I recently inherited a suitcase that contains, amongst other things, 19 letters. Wow, that's a treasure that he wrote to his parents while he was serving in India during World War One. There's also a small box containing over 200 photos rolled up tightly. What? How lucky are you? That's incredible that he took while he was over there. I would love him to talk me through them. I'd love him to talk me through them, and he's not even my relative. That's amazing. Let's have a look at a few more before I leave you all. Moira's said, question of the week, new Christmas pajamas for all. That's another nice one. This is traditions, I imagine. Letters up the chimney. Dad standing near a door to open it, so caused a fright, and letters went up the chimney, not inflate. Oh, caused a draft. That's a bit of physics going in there. So your dad would stand and open the door, so it would cause an updraft, so the letters would fly up the chimney and not burst into flames. Too many others to mention. Another one for Victoria. She'd invite her husband's ancestor, Thomas Gainsborough. I've heard, yeah, famous Thomas Gainsborough, the portrait and landscape painter. Love to hear gossip on the well-known people he paint. Yeah, that's a good one. And maybe he could do some mini family portraits in exchange for food and company. That is a brilliant one. Love that. Let's have a look at one or two more because I can see a few people are dropping off already. Wow, so many comments, way more than I anticipated. Let's have a look at one more. This will be the last one I will. Rosie saying she remembers blancmange. Yeah, my grandma used to make blancmange. Um, Again, too many comments. I'm struggling to keep up, which is a great situation to be in. We'll end with Sharon. Sharon would invite her two times great grandfather and his parents so they can tell me about their families and break down the brick wall. Where in Africa my three times great grandfather was from, and taken from slavery, taken into slavery and sent to Kentucky in the USA. Yeah, that'd be a fantastic mystery to solve, wouldn't it? And I bet there'd be some incredible stories to hear. Do I do one more? Do I do one more? No, I think I will leave it at that. I can see lots of you saying, wishing me and everybody else a very, very Merry Christmas. Thank you. I'm going to echo the same to you. Well, as always, a lovely way to end the week. We're incredibly, we feel incredibly privileged to have you all in our wonderful community. And we love doing these. And yeah, it feels like we are all kind of one big family, even though many of us have never met. So with that in mind, I'd love to wish you all a very, very, very Merry Christmas, the happiest of New Years, and I cannot wait to see you in January 2022 when we will finally be able to unveil the 1921 census of England and Wales. So yes, stay safe all. Have a very, very, very Merry Christmas. Um, Enjoy this special time of year with your families, and stay safe. yeah, just the merriest of Christmases. I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all your wonderful comments. There's been some fantastic ones this week. Far too many to read through, but we genuinely love seeing them, and I know our other viewers enjoy reading them. So thank you to everybody who contributes. You make these. But yeah, I think the only thing left to say is have yourself a merry little Christmas. Oh, I can't believe I was going to try and sing then. But yeah, see you soon. Merry Christmas, one and all. Bye bye.